many of us will be familiar with different types of virtualization. Okay, you have something which you run on your desktop itself. If you're using VMware's product, you may be familiar with VMware Workstation or VM Player, VirtualBox, Virtual PC, so on and so forth. So what we do is we run the software wherein we are able to create multiple virtual machines and work on more than one particular operating system, right? And then we also have what is called as a VDI, Virtual Desktop Infrastructure. I think most of you would now be familiar with that because I see a lot of companies embracing that thanks to COVID. So everything is hosted on the central premises or probably even the cloud. The cloud also supports VDI today. And those of you who want to log into your office desktop, you do it through the VDI. So that's another form of virtualization. You also have application virtualization, borders on containerization, etc. You have bring your own device, applying policies, securing your own device, allowing to access the office applications, data, etc., which is the digital workspace, which enables remote working to even, let's say, the tab. Not sure how many of you are already into it. And the heartline of the entire virtualization space, the data center virtualization or server virtualization. In fact, that is the subject of today. So looking at what all VMware is into, as far as virtualization goes, I have not mentioned something additional which it is into. When it comes to virtualization, it's a market leader in data center virtualization, where it uses the vSphere product range. It also acquired Nicira, wherein it offered network virtualization in the name of NSX. You have the vCloud and vRealize suite to manage the private cloud, hybrid cloud, automation, and so many other stuff. The Horizon View range of products would address the VDI space, and VMware Workspace ONE is for the digital workspace. That is your VYOD concept. Now, why is it significant? VMware is not a new product. It's not the latest fad, but still it is extremely significant. Simply because today the world has settled into the hybrid multi-cloud model. If you look at the Fortune top 100 or 500 companies, most of them have embraced cloud. They have their on-premises setup. They have their cloud embracement, not just one, but many. They would be aligned with AWS, Azure, GCP, Ali, and what else, you name it, and it's there. And all of these would be aligned to their requirements of IT. Why would they embrace so many things? Why is a hybrid cloud not just going with a single cloud service provider? Why so many? Simply because there are different features, different price point, different advantages with each of them, and everything is available as a service. I can pick up one service from cloud A, a second service from cloud B. Tomorrow the pricing changes. The cloud provider does not dictate terms. I can move back and forth on premises between clouds, etc. So the hybrid multi-cloud is the model to stay. And that's what makes the on-premises data center even more interesting. And we also need to embrace how the on-premises data center interacts or interfaces or interconnects with these clouds. So let me jump slowly into the subject. The subject of today's discussion, data center virtualization. So we also need to understand what the data center used to be and how it has evolved. A legacy data center had the hardware servers and each server used to have an operating system and application. So that hardware was dedicated to a single server, as we all know. This paved way to virtualized environment, where in VMware the pioneer brought in the hypervisor. In those days it was called the ESX, and today it's called the ESXi, Elastic Sky. And this ESX kind of virtualized the server hardware. So what do I mean by virtualization? It simply abstracts the hardware or subdivides the hardware and allows multiple operating systems and applications to run on the same hardware. So the next step of evolution was the virtualized data center, never to go back, because the price advantage, the consolidation advantage, the overcommitment advantage, the feature richness, everything was here to stay. Did they stop there? No. They took it several notches further. They brought in automation. Of course, today every virtualized solution provider is into the same feature set. So the automation included automated failover, automated load balancing, automated storage provisioning, so on and so forth. Several things were brought in. So this automation was also revolving around a SLA, which was translated into policies. We started moving towards policy-based automation, the birth of software-defined data center. In fact, it has evolved into a software-defined infrastructure today. The software-defined data center is the data center today. So whether it's VMware or Microsoft's Hyper-V or Zen or whatever you call it, and everything supports the software-defined data center. What we are going to delve into today is going to be virtualizing the data center, looking at its feature of how it makes it a software-defined data center using the VMware's vSphere product. And this is also the range of topics, the subjects covered in its certification program, VMware Certified Associate, in the data center virtualization, VCA DCV. Okay, so what are the products that come into the picture? This specifically for those of you who are new. I have all these servers. Server environment comprises of rack and blade servers in the data center. The vSphere suite comprises of the Prime ESXi hypervisor, which virtualizes the server hardware. These servers are managed by admins using the vSphere host client. If you have several servers, as a typical data center would have, it is managed by a central application component called the vCenter. You have two methods, GUI methods of handling the vCenter, which in turn controls the entire data center filled with your servers, storage, network, etc. And those are your vSphere client and vSphere web client. So those are the client interfaces that are provided to manage the vCenter, in turn all the components in the data center. So this would be the bunch of products which constitute the vSphere suite. Now let me walk you through the entire story step by step. So initially I have this rack server or the blade server, and that rack or the blade server has been virtualized by installing a hardware abstraction software, the hypervisor. The different types of hypervisor include VMware's ESXi, Microsoft's Hyper-V, Linux KVM, so on and so forth. So once we virtualize the server hardware, it means that the next step, I can run multiple machines on it. I can have a Windows operating system. I can have an Oracle database. I can have a Red Hat Linux enterprise server. I can have several operating systems, server grade operating system running on it. in a virtualized manner. So I call them virtual machines. So I create not just one environment with one operating system, but several independent server operating systems are installed. So VM1 will have a different operating system, VM2 can have a different operating system application, so on and so forth, depending on the hardware capacity. The hypervisor virtualizes and allows provisioning of several virtual machines. I can also have templates, readily deployable templates. I directly bring it here, power it on, that's it. No installation, nothing. Straight away deploy. Templates are available. What happens in a real data center? I don't have just one hardware. I have several hardwares which are virtualized, and all these hardwares will be managed by a centralized application which is called the vCenter server. The vCenter server itself is a virtual machine. It runs on one of the virtualized hardware and controls the entire bunch of hardware. I may have multiple data centers. I have one in Chennai, one in Bangalore, one in Dubai, one in New York. Yeah, a single vCenter server can manage multiple data centers, each with several hardware and several virtual machines. Possible. Of course, there are going to be limits. A virtual vCenter can manage a couple of thousand hosts and about 25 to 35,000 virtual machines. And if my organization is so huge that the numbers are crossing these, I can have multiple vCenters which can manage the entire environment. I have one vCenter in Chennai, another vCenter in New York, a third vCenter in Europe, so on and so forth. All of them connected together, centrally managed. That's called a link mode vCenter. Right. So what happens within? How do the virtual machines communicate with each other? So you have what is called as a virtual switch as part of the hypervisor. It is this virtual switch which helps connect the virtual machines. The virtual machines not only connect to communicate among themselves, they also connect to the physical switch and the physical desktops which are used by the users. So the virtual switch would be the virtualization of the networking layer. Of course, when you embrace NSX, you have the virtual router, the virtual NAT, gateway, all those stuff. Many of the networking components are virtualized into the NSX product. But as far as the vSphere goes, we deal only with the layer 2 virtual switch. The networking is also virtualized. What about storage? In a data center, you have different kinds of storage. You have the block storage, which could be the local hard disk. You have the SAN storage, which could be your FCSAN, FCOE SAN, or the latest newer iSCSI SAN. Or you also may have a backup archival commonly shared network attached storage or NAS. So all these types of storages are found and supported in VMware. VMware introduced its own proprietary solutions for the storage space. It said, why should our clients invest in costly SANs? We will pull up all the hard disks of the rack servers and blade servers. In software, create the shared storage which is required in a data center environment and provide that as vSAN or virtual SAN to the data center users. What happens? I no longer require to invest in costly SANs. I pay up a little more to VMware, it gives me the vSAN license, and I make the best use of the hard disk built into my hardware servers, the vSAN solution. It went beyond. You had this software-defined storage, which also allowed differential treatment to different VMs. I could have a platinum standard, I could have a gold standard, I could have a silver standard, wherein I differentiate on the same storage layer I differentiate the service levels for different virtual machines. This is done using what is called a storage policy. So the game changer with vSAN, with vSphere 5.5 was the software-defined storage which was brought in. And with vSphere 6, they also extended the software-defined storage aspects to SANs. They introduced what is called as the virtual volumes, which offered great flexibility, which leveraged the advantage of the hardware players like your Dell, Hitachi, and other storage vendors. Whatever features were supported by the storage players was utilized by VMware and vMadmin. Storage admin's role was slowly getting knocked off. So there are 4 different kinds of storages supported in the VMware's data center. Okay. What all can we do with the VMs? Everything I do in the data center is to play around with virtual machines. Now the data center has to be visualized for a massive enterprise like a bank. I'm going to have hundreds of servers, several VMs running, and there could be provisioning which will be required on an ad hoc basis, which will be required on a scalable basis. As required, I must be able to expand quickly without too much of hassle. So you have these features wherein you're able to replicate more number of VMs as and when you require. Let me assume I have a VM or I have a server, a Windows 2019 server, and I have installed certain applications. And now the team requires that more such instances be provisioned. The same application needs to be installed again. It's going to be taking a week's time to do the installation, but the team says the new project is up and coming, and so the same setup has to be readied up within, let's say, the next few hours. So what do? I call the administrator, I ask him, hey, can you install all these stuff which last time took 1 week? Can you do it quickly? He says, yes. How does that happen? There is a master copy, the parent, which is cloned to create a new copy. And this happens in a few moments or minutes. And if this is predicted to be required on an ongoing basis, what I do is I create a template out of the parent VM and a frozen state is stored. Whenever I require a new VM with the same set of applications, software, etc., all I need to do is create a new copy from that template and start using it. So what used to be a long time for provisioning got reduced to a few moments or few minutes. So this again is a feature of VMware. Right? Several VMs are up running. And that could be several different types of demands. On one virtual machine, I may be running a database. The database would be more concerned about fetching data, running queries, and doing multiple operations on the storage. Well, I may also have a server, a file server, which would be accessed by all the users of the company or the enterprise. And they may not have much of disk access, but it may be much to do with the application. Okay, I could have a third, a server which is offering the business intelligence piece of it. Analytics are running. So online processing is being done. So the sales head wants reports. What is currently happening? How much, let's say it's a retail chain like Reliance Retail or your Big Bazaar or whatever. And the sales head sitting at the corporate office is looking at the billing and trying to run an online analytics. So that would involve a huge amount of CPU power. That virtual machine would require a lot of processing power. So we have seen 3 different types of virtual machines, 3 different use cases warranting different demands on the resources. One requiring more of storage access, one requiring more of memory, one requiring more of processing. Now, assume all these virtual machines that have been created, the configuration is the same. All of them have 4 processors and let's say 16 GB or 32 GB RAM, all of them. But each of them serves a different purpose. Each of their demands are different. So what happens is that VMware would not differentiate. It says it's a 4 processor, 16 GB machine. I treat all one and the same. If you feel the demands are different, you can tweak them. So you start working with each of the individual virtual machines. You tell, hey, the one running application software will require more memory because it's memory intensive operations. The business intelligence revolves around a lot of memory usage. The one that is running the database will require more of storage performance, and the third more of processor performance. So VMware allows us to tweak these parameters. So on these virtual machines, I change the priority of CPU, memory, and storage by changing parameters which are called shares, reservations, and limits. So the shares, reservations, and limits allow me to tweak the virtual machine to perform under contentious situations with whatever resources they need. So that's the degree of fine-tuning which is available, which is definitely a very, very big advantage when you really want to tweak in times of contentions especially. Okay. I will also have to do some updates. I may have to do some upgrades. I may have to run some security updates or patch updates or whatever. But whenever these are released, I might not be sure whether these are going to make sense for me or whether these are not going to create additional problems for me. So these are not going to create additional problems for me. So what we normally do, whenever I run a new upgrade on an application or I run a Windows patch update, a security bug fix or whatever, and I want to ensure that the worst case scenario is the worst scenario. I at least don't want new problems. So what I do, I take a snapshot of that particular virtual machine. So before I do the upgrade, patch update, etc., I take a snapshot. Supposing it's a multi-stage or a 2-stage update. So what I do, I first take a snapshot, complete the first application update or whatever. Everything is fine, not an issue. Then I would like to run the second update. I take one more snapshot. The graphics show you what exactly happens behind the scene. I'm not getting into the theory of it, but it shows you what is actually happening behind the scene. And now I'm safe. Something goes bad, something goes wrong, I can always revert back either to the stage 1 or stage 0. So that's what snapshot helps me with. And it is very effectively managed in the VMware environment. So what happens is that the disk utilization is highly minimized. Only delta disks are created. In fact, the latest versions of VMware use this technique to create, let's say, multiple clone VMs in a very, very short while by using very, very limited number of resources. A master copy of the hard disk is kept. Delta disks are created for each of the new VMs. So the new VMs are provisioned in a jiffy. I need 25 VMs, let's say, equivalent of one that exists. The one that already exists forms the base or the golden image. The hard disk of that existing virtual machine will be the base hard disk. And the new 25 machines may be created in, let's say, 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes. So what happens is only delta disks are created. The read-only copy is the golden image of the base disk, and the delta disks are only going to store new information on the newly created virtual machines. So from Snapshot, what they brought forth as a feature, the delta disk, it has come a long way, and today for cloning also, this concept is being used. Of course, it's not just about VMware. Several other products also use the same technique. Okay. How do I organize resources in my data center? I'm going to have multiple servers. I'm going to have multiple virtual machines. I might have different priorities, different requirements. A group of servers which may be constituting a single application or a single task. So that is what would be significant for me. I might want to pool the resources available in my data center, all the hardware, and I might also want to allocate resources to a bunch of servers or departments. So what I do is I constitute what is called as resource pools. In the resource pools, I will also allocate the resource requirements. For example, I have 3 servers in this picture. Each of the picture is going to have, each of the server will have a capacity of, let's say, 4 gigahertz and 16 GB RAM. I have a total of 12 gigahertz and 48 GB RAM. So what I do, I have the accounting virtual machines requiring 4 gigahertz and 16 GB RAM in total. I create what is called as accounting resource pool, allocate this set of resources, provision the VM inside the resource pool. So out of this 12 gigahertz and 48 GB, these VMs get 4 gigahertz and 16 GB. I can also have a parent pool to this, finance department, under which accounting could be a sub-department. So the finance department actually is allocated 8 gigahertz and 32 GB, in which 4 and 16 gets sub-allocated to accounting. So the other software, other virtual machines running in this department get to use the other resources. So whatever is not allocated to these resource pool would be available to other VMs outside of the resource pools. So see how I can manage the various resources, availability, etc. All right. I can, if you have heard of this term, multi-tiered application. Some of you would have heard. Multi-tiered application is like multiple virtual machines combined together run a site. Let me assume Flipkart. Flipkart would not have just one server. It will have several servers because the load is going to be high. It's not that it is going to have multiple web servers. It will have a web server. It will have a business intelligence server, the application server. It will have a database server. All these 3 together connect and constitute the portal, the e-commerce portal. So you may have different types of servers like that, applications like that, your SharePoint, your CRM, ERP. All these would constitute different types of servers and multiple servers. I want to manage this group together. I want to switch them on in a certain order with a certain delay. I want to work with them as a single entity. For example, I would like to, create a template of this entire bunch of servers. I would like to export the template to another branch office of mine, so on and so forth. I want to treat all these VMs together as a single entity. What can I do? I can take the help of VApp. I can put all these VMs together, put it under a VApp, allocate the resources, set the starting stopping order. I can have a complete control of that bunch. So VApp is the solution. Right. So again, the VApp runs on pooled resources of my data center. what happens if I want to run a patch update? My servers are installed with hypervisor. The virtual machines might have some new hardware changes happening. The operating systems may be installed with a bunch of drivers and special features using what is called as VM tools. All these may be periodically updated by VMware. So what do? We run a feature called the Update Manager, which might be similar to your system's configuration, which does your WS, US. Those of you in Windows might be familiar with your patching and stuff like that. So what it does is it downloads all the information from the VMware site, and whatever patching you may want to do, it runs on all the VMware products. The server hypervisor, the VM hardware, the VM tools, everything. All of this can be achieved using the Update Manager. Right? What gets interesting in the technology side are these stuff. Suppose I have a virtual machine which is running on the first server hardware. For whatever reason, I would like to move the virtual machine onto the second server hardware without powering it off. Is it possible? Well, obviously, yes, it is possible. The only prerequisite is that the virtual machine's storage, wherever this hard disk exists for this virtual machine, must be connected both to this as well as this hardware. As long as the storage is common to both, you can live migrate the virtual machine from one server hardware to the other. And this is called vMotion, or live migration, or hot migration. You may also quite obviously do it with the VM off, which is called the cold migration. But what is interesting is the live migration part of it. Well, I have a slightly different requirement. The place, the SAN where I have stored these VM files has got filled up or is likely to get full in no time, the next couple of days. I purchased a new storage and I wish to move the storage files, this virtual machine files, from one location or one storage to another storage without impacting the production. I would not like to have any kind of a downtime. Yes, that feature is supported and it is called storage vMotion or storage migration. Virtual machine remains perfectly powered on and I am able to migrate the entire bunch of VMs files from one SAN storage to another storage. It could be SAN, NAS, local, any stuff. I may have a combination of the two. Let me assume that there's one virtual machine whose information is stored in one storage. This hard disk is here. This server is getting overloaded and this storage is getting filled fast. So what I intend to do, I intend to move both of them to a different server, different storage box. That is called enhanced vMotion. Now, is that all? Not really. Some time back, I was making a mention that you have this thing called the linked mode vCenter. I was mentioning that you can have a vCenter in Chennai with it controlling, let's say, data centers in India. There's a data center in Chennai, Mumbai, Hyderabad, etc. And the vCenter in Chennai controls all of these. My organization has its branch in the Gulf. So there are a couple of data centers and a vCenter in Dubai which controls the Gulf data centers. A couple of them in US, a couple of them in European Union, a couple of them in Australia. So I have 5 different vCenters controlling some 15 odd data centers across the globe. They're all connected together. Common pool of administrators manage it using a single pane of glass. Now it so happens that the project that was being executed or developed in Chennai is now done and ready for production. The team which is going to consume this particular development, I say that the development team sits in Chennai. So they wanted to have the entire infrastructure in Chennai. Once the development is completed, the consuming department sits in Australia. They would like to migrate from the India data center to the Australia data center. Live migration is possible. Lock, stock, and barrel, just like movers and packers. That is called cross vCenter vMotion, which goes across geographical boundaries. Of course, there are some prerequisites in terms of latency, permitted, etc., bandwidth requirements. Once that is serviced, yes, you will be able to migrate the entire stuff from one geographical location to another. That's called the cross vCenter vMotion. And like anything else, monitoring becomes extremely important. We should be able to monitor the parameters, the health, the risk, all those stuff. A very elaborate monitoring feature is available. Anything goes wrong, anything goes fishy, yes, built-in alarms are going to raise the alerts. We want to set our own customized alarms or alerts. Yes, very much possible. Customized alerts can be set so that we are able to monitor the way we want for the parameters we desire. You can create a massive infrastructure which has got several data centers spread across the globe with several vCenters. Quite obviously, will not be employing or engaging just about one or two administrators. You're going to have at least a dozen administrators performing different roles. So you must have a control as to which administrator can do what. I may have an APAC administrator who is a lead, and then under him are a bunch of administrators, one responsible for managing the virtual machines, another for ESXi patching, a third for backing up, and a fourth for managing the networking, so on and so forth. So each of them must be assigned different privileges. So this is where your role-based access control comes in. So the role-based access control allows you to allocate permissions to different admins based on whatever you desire. So finally, coming to the most interesting or the best aspect of data center management, which is the secret or which is a major reason for success in the virtualization and software-defined space, is the feature called cluster. What do we do here? We group multiple servers, the hardware, together, and it constitutes a cluster of ESXis. I can combine up to 64 rack servers and blade servers together to constitute a cluster, and it can support a maximum of about 8,000 VMs in one cluster. In fact, the current features support stretched cluster, wherein I can decide to have in the same cluster a few machines in Chennai, a few machines in Bangalore, a few in Hyderabad, and a few in Mumbai. So what happens? I don't need any other DR site solution. I can spread the same cluster across different locations, manage it with a single vCenter. I can manage storage. I can use that extended cluster feature or the stretch cluster feature in vSAN and do away with the whole idea of a DR site solution separately. So what are the cluster features? One of the cluster feature is about balancing the load among the various servers. Let me assume I have 100 servers, 100 rack servers in my data center. For the time being, let me take a single data center with 100 hardware. Each hardware able to support about 20 VMs, which means I'm going to have a total of 2,000 virtual machines running on 100 ESXi hosts. So what I do, I bundle them to two different clusters because they belong to two different verticals. So 50 hosts in one cluster, another 50 hosts in another cluster. And then I configure load balancing. Why do I need to do this? Because some of the virtual machines may be of very high configuration, very high utilization, and some of them may be very low utilization configuration. Now, what if the 20 VMs running on one ESXi host are all of high configuration and high utilization, while the 20 running on a different host are of low utilization, low configuration? Then one of the servers is going to be overloaded and the other is going to have a lot of excess capacity. It is to address this particular aspect, you have this feature called distributed resource scheduler. What it does is, periodically, let's say once in a minute or once in 5 minutes, it analyzes the load, figures out whether any host is overloaded or underloaded. Of course, in the latest version, they have changed it a little. They have made it more VM focused, less host focused. So it performs a load analysis, figures out if there is an imbalance in the cluster, and ensures that they are evenly distributed. And the interesting part is there is an extension. Suppose out of this 100 servers, assume it is the Christmas to New Year holiday in the Western world, or the Ramzan period in the Gulf, or the Chinese New Year, or whatever. There is a season where most of the offices are shut and the load is less. The extension of this feature, called the Distributed Power Management or DPM, will move all the running VMs into a bunch of limited set of hardware, automatically shut down the balance hardware. So let's say only 20 server hardwares are up and running, 30 are shut down. When the holiday period is over, the DPM will start switching on these servers as the VMs are brought back up. So DRS and DPM together ensure that power optimization is done as well as load in the entire data center is balanced. Okay. What about failures? It's not that you're going to have 24/7, 365 days uptime. Very difficult. The uptime for the application or the virtual machine is managed by ensuring redundancy. What do we mean? If I have a load for 100 servers, I provision 120 servers. 20 servers are spare. Something goes bad with one of the server, the other servers are able to share and take the load. That is called vSphere availability or high availability. So the moment a server fails, what happens to the VMs on that server is that it gets restarted on other running hardware. And this is exactly the reason why we need to be running more hardware than 100% capacity of VMs. So if, like I said, if I need 100 hardware servers to run 2000 VMs, I better provision 120 rack servers so that in case there is a failure, I have 20% spare capacity. How much percent of spare capacity depends on MTBF and other criticality, but then that would be based on the SLA policy my organization demands. But remember, if server hardware fails, the virtual machines which were running on that hardware will restart, which means first the VMs would fail, there would be a downtime. They would restart on other running hardware. Supposing I did not want any downtime, I wanted zero downtime. Restart not allowed. Application is very critical. It's a banking application. Users would be severely impacted, and I cannot afford that. Then you have this other feature called fault tolerance. The fault tolerance creates one more mirror copy of the virtual machine. So anytime there's a failure of one hardware, immediately the other VM which is running on a different hardware goes live. So there could be a latency observed while the cutover takes place. there would not be any downtime. So if you look for a zero downtime solution with VMware, fault tolerance is your answer. Like I was mentioning a little earlier, the vSAN, utilizing all the hard disks of your rack servers or your blade servers in the data center, is again a cluster feature. So provided we configure a cluster, which is the case in any data center practically, we would stand to gain the advantage of all these features. Of course, they're all licensed. Different licensing would enable different set of features and different quantum of each of these features as well. Right? So this is the final leg of your data center feature. So I go to access the vCenter. You can see that they have provided with the username password here. I can simply send the username and password from notes. Login. This is the vCenter that I'm logging into. So what I see here is the vCenter. The vCenter manages a data center. Inside the data center is my cluster. This cluster has 2 ESXi hosts, right? And these 2 ESXi hosts have 3 virtual machines. This is a Windows 10 virtual machine which is powered off. I can power on. So let me show you this. So the cluster feature is where I will be able to configure the DRS and HA. So DRS as of now shows as turned on. Let's look at HA. HA shows as turned off. I'm going to turn on high availability as well. I'm not going to change much. I'm going to use the default settings. So what I've done is I've turned on both high availability as well as DRS. Now this Windows 10 I'm going to switch on. But before I switch on the Windows 10, I would also like to know what VMs are running on this particular server. So I select the server, go to virtual machines. I see Tiny Linux 2 is running here. I select the server and I can see Tiny Linux is running here and Windows 10 is configured to run here. Okay. So let me look at the tasks. I have initiated availability, HA. The HA agent is being installed. It is not yet completed. So let me wait till this is completed. Yeah, it is completed. Now high availability feature is also enabled. And I switch on this Windows virtual machine. It gets powered on here. I can watch the powering on my console. I hope my console is also visible. If I want a big screen, I can launch the web console. The web console will show me the full screen of Windows 10 coming up. So let the Windows 10 come up, and depending on the utilization, if Windows 10 is going to be heavy, automatically the other machine will migrate. This might land up migrating from here to here automatically also. But let me not wait for that to happen. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to simulate a failure. This hardware, which is running these 2 virtual machines, I'm going to fail it by shutting it down. So what happens when this shuts down? Because I've given a shutdown command, it will take some time. When this shuts down, quite obviously these virtual machines will go down. What happens after they go down? Logically, they are supposed to restart in this particular server hardware. So we are going to observe the failover to this particular ESXi hardware. Let's see, wait for that to happen. We should see if this shuts down, it should show red mark. Then we should see this vanish from here. Then we should see that failing over to the other ESXi. So like you see, the entire thing, the cluster itself, you can see that this is showing red in color. Let me refresh the screen. Okay, let's give it some time. I'll walk over here and watch this space. Like I told you some time back, the entire story is available even in hands-on lab. Of course, you cannot install something if you want to build it out of wow. That's the story. So you can see that what was running on this ESXi has come into this ESXi. So all the three virtual machines are now running on this particular host. If this were to come back up again, DRS would run, do a load balancing, move some virtual machine from here to the other place. I hope this demonstration of cluster failover HA configuration was interesting enough. You can do a host of things. I want to create a clone. All I do is I right click on this. Okay, this is not it up. This is up. Windows 10 seems to be up. So I right click on this. I clone to a new virtual machine and give it a name. I select where I want to deploy that. I would say it is a cluster and the host that is up and running. I select the data store and I say finish. So it starts provisioning a new virtual machine. You can see that the existing Windows 10 machine remains and a new virtual machine gets created. That's the cloning process. One of you had asked me what is the difference between a cloning and snapshotting. So original virtual machine remains, a new clone gets created. Whereas if I were to take a snapshot, let me take a snapshot of this tiny Linux. I go here and I take snapshot. Gives a name. I say OK. And you can see that a snapshot is getting taken. This snapshot does not mean any new VM is created. Nothing. It is just a point in time copy taken. You can see that tiny Linux exists and that's about it. Snapshot process is complete. Whereas for cloning, Windows 10, a new clone has been created. It's in the process. Once it completes 100%, this clone is ready. I power this on, you will see a Windows operating system. Completed. I had not powered on while creating, so it is in the power off state. If I had mentioned power it on, it would have come to the power on state. I power it up now. So quite a few things, like I said, can be experimented in this environment, provided you understand the environment. So I understand the architecture which is here, and so I am demonstrating what is possible. Right? So my new Windows clone is up and running.